one is enable some basic device configuration for the platform. I think people working on the menus maybe noticed some patches going on. The first one is about the BKK16-3, and Mark already moved that for the basic BKK16 support. I mean the wild interrupt, but the IPS and I mean the PCI MSI support is still on discussion. And another one is that the PCI support. Yeah, there's a long history about that, and we're already working on that for more than 1 year, and then basically Lorenzo put a lot of efforts on that too. And yeah, Thomas is not here. I think he's in Poland now. Yeah, I think the patch itself is in good shape, but still needs some comments from the maintainer of PCI and the ACPI maintainer of fail. That's the progress status. And another one is important is about the SMU support. So Lorenzo will take over the work. There's some basic patch about how to pass the IOIT table to get the SMU information, and there is a basic support for the SMU v2 now. And Lorenzo will reflect the revoke patches for the SMU v3. Yeah. And also there's NUMA patches. Yeah. For the multi-socket system. Actually, this one is also a long history one. So we're working on that more than 1 year. And Kevin is working on the code support, code support, and also for the device tree. And I'm working on the ACPI part. I think the problem is that we need some more tests on the code support. So that's the device configuration level. So after that, we're moving on maybe some high level, visualization support, like KVM. We found from Red Hat already sent a patch about half a year ago. And then Julian from ARM just going to another direction, which may better solution for that. So we're going for that direction for the KVM support. And another level is, we are not satisfied with the device configuration. For the ARM server, it's very important for the Rust. And so in the ACPI 6.1, there's a lot of new features added for the ARM server to support the API. Yeah. And the people from Qualcomm, and working on that, and already some patches sent out on the mail list. So if people are interested, you can test and prepare your firmware and test those patches. And there's some power management from Ashby, if you would like to introduce.
Well, there's the CPPC stuff, which is the CPU performance management part of it, which is upstream already. But there's some optimization work that's going on that's under review. The CPU idle part of it that's being driven by Sudeep at ARM. Rafael has acted some of those patches. He seems to be fairly happy with the current state, but he said he'll get back to it once he's done with some other things he's busy with. But overall it's in decent shape.
Yeah. So this, something lot happening there. Not only about the basic device configuration, but also about the power management, the visualization support, and the Rust support, the API. Yeah. So I think the API is really a good abstraction to support the ARM server Rust features. Yeah. We cannot fix that with device tree, but the API can. Yeah, Mark may have some comments about that. You already comments about some, EDAC support for the for the cache, right, that'd be very hard to abstract it with device tree, but it's profitable for the API.
Yeah, there is no current standard for this in device tree, so API offers an abstraction that yes, we don't have in device tree. Theoretically, it's possible to do something similar, but no one has attempted that.
Yeah. So there's still some basic support for the device configuration. I mean the PCI, the PTV3, ITS support. I mean the PCI MSI support, and the SMU. So if people are interested in that, please go review the patch and test them. That's all.
Yep. Okay. Couple other things to mention is, I don't know, Lorenzo, do you want to say anything about where the PCIs?
I think there is a section more about it, mostly to give out what I think it's status of PCI. It is what it is, because basically there is, well, I wanted to mention that you didn't mention, but there is also some janitorial duties to do to clean up x86 for ACPI, which is worth mentioning because basically that's what we have been doing. It's definitely not perfect, and part of the patches have to deal with legacy, which is massive. So, and PCI is part of it, unfortunately. And so, and the reason why it's not yet in the kernel, I think it's basically because we come second or third, and we need to clean up what x86 put together to implement PCIe on CPI. So that's the main problem, in my opinion. Well, there are some bits and pieces, but those are means we can sort them out, but that's not the means, actually.
Yeah, it's some of the refactoring is going to be the messy bit. Yeah.
Another bit is first firmware rendering. I think we reviewed the patches for ARM and we spotted some issues with the x86 implementation which are still, well, they felt silent, so we're still waiting for them to fix this stuff because it's likely to be broken.
Right.
So that's another bit where basically you say you cannot make progress because well, the x86 version is actually not working. But at the end of the day, whatever you change there, I mean, might trigger regression, so that's a significant issue to make progress on that side. And well, there are other bits and pieces that I'll mention tomorrow if you want to attend to PCA, just to give out what I see as the status of the. But yeah, that's a lot of what to say.
Yeah, and then, well, and you mentioned RAS, so there's a bunch of Qualcomm patches. There's thru and some of the other Qualcomm folks are looking at the user space RAS daemon to see about getting the information back out from either an EDAC driver or whatever it might be.
Yes, we did a lot of work on that.
Right. And then I think the only other thing to mention specifically would be SMMUv3, where we've got to wait for ACPI CA to incorporate the changes for some data structures. As soon as they do that, we can submit patches to actually add in support for SMMUv3. It's a bit of a variation on V2, so it's not too bad, but so, okay. Given that summary, it sounds like there's just a lot of things going on, and there are. But I suspect within a few months, ACPI will be to the point where it just sort of works. And what we'll be looking at that point is any of the more exotic features. I've still gotten no feedback that any of them are useful or anybody wants them, but they are still there. So, you know, for example, thermal management, fan control, embedded controllers, which is a whole strange thing. There's a new table, which is the, I'm going to get this wrong, by the way, NVDIM firmware interface table, is that? Okay. Yes, the NFIT. This was just added with this release of the spec. In theory, the implementation is architecture independent, so shouldn't be a big deal, but we don't know until we actually try and until we actually have hardware that supports it, so we can try it with. Okay, so there's those things going on. And of course, behind the background of all that, there's additional work that's going on with the standard and with the spec for the next versions and things where we know that the servers are not quite right. And I stumbled across an API table the other day that has a 16-bit value for the CPU ID. It's not going to work on ARM, so we're going to have to fix that. But you know, there's some odds and ends like that that are still going on. If you look out to a year, there's not much left, unless people start clamoring for certain features. That's when I get to retire to an island in the Bahamas. I think that's about that, unless other folks.
On the server, the feedback I'm hearing is that there's less interest in that because for like data center, you don't need a thermal solution to be OS dependent.
Mm.
So,
Well,
I think that's why we're not seeing that many people clamoring to it. But then, you know, it doesn't say that somebody might not be wanting it, but that's why.
well, as far as I know, it's never been implemented on x86 either. So, I mean, maybe it has, but I've never seen a box that does it. Sorry? The thermal management?
Those are for laptops.
Okay. Okay.
That
Yeah.
makes sense.
Which makes sense, right? So that's kind of where we are with that. You know, if you do have suggestions or things that you think might be useful to be in ACPI, do let me know. We do work with the standards committee and stuff, and be glad to discuss those things. But
Topologies resurrecting stuff that we consign to the. We'll get to that later because we've got bigger fish to fry right now.
it's raising its head again.
Yeah,
Okay.
I reckon that some of the work that we, you know, you and I were working on, Hanjin was working on.
The original static tables.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that.
Yeah. For those in the back that may not be able to hear Charles, there was some early discussions on CPU topology. We thought we had a solution. Sounds like we don't really, or it's not complete, so we're going to have to go back and revisit some of that in the specification, which will in turn mean some implementation. Okay.
Performance management ain't great. There's going to be stuff there. There's nothing for devices. Or CPU.
That you would want to put in the spec. Okay. Cool, we'll talk.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've got a list.
I suspect you do. Okay, let's see what else. I mentioned the mailing list. The _DSD method within ACPI. The interest and motivation to work on it seems to go through a very strict sine wave. And I would say we're right at the dead bottom of that sine wave at this point. Why that is, I'm not entirely sure. I was starting to look at it just before Connect, and I will start looking at it again after Connect. I think we are in general agreement on what the rules for using it are and what the rules are for actually registering a device property within ACPI. So I think to a great extent we've codified the rules and we know what they are. It just, we haven't really told anybody else. So some more public discussion needs to occur, probably some support tools to make it work well.
I think part of the problem is that although we've created the mailing list, there's no description of how we agree something. There's no like a DCO model in the next right or something that says, like, so at the moment there's been a lot of discussion on the rules, a lot of going back and forwards.
Right.
Raphael clarified quite a lot of that. Since then there's been other discussions and Raphael said he would do a new version, but he hasn't because he's busy.
Correct.
Hopefully people are getting onto the common theme here. So because he kind of took ownership of that first set of, you know, you could just literally send the other one. But even when he does send another one, what is the act by, yes, this is completely agreed process, but we don't actually have one, right? And actually, we haven't even described one in the rules as to when something can be considered as done. So we keep talking about it, but we never get to the done stage because we don't have a process
We don't
for
have
marking
deciding
something
when
as
we're done.
Yeah,
Um,
that's what the problem is.
Okay. I'll write
And in
something
the
up.
meantime, people have done stuff with BSD, which is now not in the database, so we're kind of quite late.
Okay. So I'll try to write something up either this week or on the way home, and try to pick up on that discussion next week. Maybe look, the automation and tools is interesting. Yeah, getting the framework for having the discussion for deciding on something is critical. But and for those that aren't aware, BSD allows you to define device properties, very similar to device tree. But what we don't want to do is we don't want to do a wholesale import of everything that exists currently in device tree into ACPI. That would just be wrong. We would reproduce all the mistakes that were made, just carry those forward, and that doesn't help anybody. Okay. But I think the key thing is it seems to be on hiatus for a while. But like I said, I hope to next week get back to that. I started last week. Okay. And then the third topic, and after this you'll have to fend for yourselves, and either find coffee or talk amongst yourselves. I don't care which. But the last topic is ACPI compliance testing. So one of the things, so as often happens in open source, the itch that I had was, why, after 20-some years, is there no compliance test for ACPI? This seems crazy to me. So I started working on it. The firmware test suite provides a fantastic framework for doing so. It's actually incredibly easy to add tests to it and to bring new things into the framework. So what I've done is I've actually gotten Upstream to agree to add a new command line parameter that says ACPI compliance. And what I've been doing is going through the tests and looking at the ones that actually test for compliance and marking them as such. Where there are no tests, or where there, well, let me back up a second. FWTS, the firmware test suite, where it started from was looking for known problems in existing firmware so that when I bring up my OS, I don't run into them again. Okay. It was not complete by any stretch of the imagination. Was not in, I don't think it was ever meant to be complete. So I may make you stand up so that people can throw rocks at you for FWTS too. This is Alex Home, who's one of the upstream maintainers for FWTS. But it served its purpose and it did it really well, and it continues to do it really well. So by putting compliance tests in it, we're actually building a superset on top of that. And I have now done that for 3 tables specifically. The RSDP, the FADT, and the MADT. And 2 of those tables, the reason there are now compliance tests for them is because we can't put those same tests in the kernel. If we put them in the kernel, they take out an incredible number of x86 systems. And just that is. Didn't bother me at all. just something about the Linux maintainer being a little upset about it, but so those 3 tables are now extensively tested. Probably they could probably even take more, I think. But if you run FWTS and you say ACPI compliance, those are specifically the tests that it will run at this point. My plan over the future is there are, I want to approach this from 2 ways. So within the SDDR and the SBSA, there are certain ACPI tables that are referenced as required or recommended. So I want to make sure we get all of the required ones first, then go to the recommended, and then, if there's extra time, we'll do the rest of them. But make sure that there are full compliance tests for all of those things. The interesting part is that may mean, or that will mean in some cases, if you look closely within the FWTS, it turns out there's a bunch of the test cases that never even get compiled on ARM. and for good reason. They're using bits of x86 specific code because they're trying to test something that's very x86 specific, which obviously doesn't port well to an ARM64 box. Okay, so fine. So it'll be getting to those tables, trying to get rid of all those places where it does say if-def ARM64 and get to a complete set of compliance tests. Now, are they sanctioned by UEFI? I don't know. But I'm sure UEFI will be looking at them at some point, yeah?
Yeah, so the current plan we have is that, so Alex would try to, continue to do the releases, right?
Right.
And once he thinks that he covers most of the compliance tests for a particular version of the ACPI spec, for example, 6.1, he would come to us and say, we think it's ready, and say,
Good.
then,
Good.
we probably will ask a few people to try and see how the results are. And then we would do a recommendation, because this is not really owned by us, it's a open source project.
Right.
So we would just have the board of the UEFI to recommend people to use the tool.
Yeah, like this particular tag or this particular version, please try this one, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we do own the UEFI one, but the
Right,
ACPI one
right.
we never created, and Alex has a package which kind of seemed to generate the momentum for people to build on top.
Right.
Right. So that's kind of what we're trying to do.
Well, and to be fair, the UEFI side has SCT, and it's got some interesting stuff in it, but
Yeah, the problem, to answer your question about why we didn't have an ACPI or SCT, right? So a lot of that is historical because the ACPI SIG, when it was created, it was just a few companies
Right.
committed to do a spec and never really delved into the implementations or the testing of it, right? There's no charter of that organization going into that. UEFI, on the other hand, has a charter in the bylaws to create the SCT for UEFI. But at the time, we didn't have the ACPI in the organization. Right.
Right, but SCT was actually specifically mentioned in the charter.
Yes.
Ah,
Yeah, so that's why I own the UTWG
Yeah.
group, right? So the charter of which is to create the SCT for UEFI.
Okay.
But ACPI was not originally in the
Right.
organization. Right. And then the other problem with ACPI is that, it's not just the tables, right? It's also the contributions.
Yep.
And to test those, you need to have an OS environment, without which, you cannot actually execute the methods, right? So there were some attempts in the Intel side that created a UEFI application that allows you to kind of emulate the environment of the OS and try that. But again, it's one of those unfunded events. Some people did some parts and then it just never continued.
Right.
Yeah. So I think WTS may be an environment that could continue to build on and then not only test the tables but also delve into some of the methods as well.
Yeah, and we may have to address the problem at some point of, some methods you can execute without having underlying hardware in and it's okay, right?
Yeah.
But other methods, yes, you are absolutely going to have something that at least emulates the hardware. And I don't know how we're going to address that one, but I'm hoping to ignore it for a while.
Right. Yeah. The tables are relatively easier. The control methods because it could have side effects, right? When you actually control the hardware, you don't want to burn the board.
Right. So right, the cache coherence attribute, right?
Yeah.
I can test to make sure that you have one, but I can't necessarily test that you have now made sure that everything is cache coherent, right?
Right.
So yeah. Okay. Okay.
Time wasn't.
Sorry?
Time wasn't involved. We'll check the time base and we'll have time base too.
Right.
Check
Yeah.
that time base
Did,
again.
did the right number of ticks happen during this? Yeah. Okay. But that's kind of the plan. To the extent possible, obviously, get as much in there as possible. Give Alex a lot to do to review code. And I would encourage people to contribute what they can. These guys have been great to work with, and it's really very straightforward to add new tests. They've done a fantastic job in building a framework to make it really straightforward to add stuff. Yeah, take advantage of it, please.
Are you going to put an SMI's test in there as well?
There are some already. There's SMBIOS, UEFI, what am I missing? An ACPI. Is there any other bits of firmware that it tries to mark? Is there any other firmware that it tries to test?
It takes SMBIOS and
Yeah, okay.
you also scan the kernel log to see what kernel has complained.
Right, right, exactly.
Is Linaro going to publish here's a list of everything that's tested, and by the way, are you guys going to promote it
To within Linaro? Don't know. I hadn't thought about that part. It was bugging me and it needed to get done. At this point, if you just use the ACPI compliance argument, you will see exactly what tests are available. That's just part of the tools at this point. We should probably, I suppose, actually document all of that someplace. It's on my to-do list, yeah.
See a lot, and that would be good enough.
Well, I can show you logs.
Cool.
Actually, one of the things I've also added to it is the ability to do what I'll call cross-testing, for lack of a better term. You can give it an arch parameter, so I can now actually look at ARM64 tables while on an x86 machine, and it'll run the ARM tests. And I can be on an ARM box and run FWTS and tell it to run the x86 tests, right? So I don't really care where I am. I'm just looking at the tables at that point. Which is kind of nice for those of us that are lazy about switching terminals back and forth. That way I can just put the arch parameter on the command line, and it doesn't matter if I forget that I'm on the wrong architecture when I'm running it.
Results would be weird.
So, okay. I'll see about doing something about that. I mean, there's the documentation from the test suite itself and the directions for running it, and those I think are pretty good, but I'm not sure, if somebody wanted to say, will this test everything that I needed to test? No, we probably can't answer that question for them at this point.
Platforms have you?
So far, a very old AMD Opteron. My laptop's a Mustang, Seattle's. I wanted to see if I could get the high key up and running and torture myself by trying to get that to work and see if I could test the tables there. One of the nice things is a company I cannot name had pulled in the patches for the FADT tests and ran them against some experimental tables for a new machine that they were producing and said, "Oh crap! Look, we screwed this up." and
It's working.
yeah, so I was ecstatic because they actually found and fixed a bug in their tables. If they hadn't, they wouldn't have had be able to, route any interrupts, so it would have been kind of bad. But so yeah, it's doing what it's doing. One of the things I would like to do, this is your suggestion, Mr. Linton, is eventually come up with a Hall of Shame. So, as people are running results, send them to me. I'd love to post them someplace just to see what things are doing. Now that there are people who may object to that, but I'd sure like to be able to post all the test results and say, okay, look, these guys do a really good job. These guys do a poor job.
Put it on the firmware OS mailing list.
Yeah, put it on the mailing list, maybe just to see what happens. But yeah, that's.
Social experiment.
The other thing is.
You give it the first opportunity.
Right.
And then, if there's a response, then you stick it on the list.
We have 15
I like
minutes
that.
to comply.
Well, and the good news too is that while I don't have access to them, and I mean, I've asked Colin about this, and I don't know if he's had a chance to look into it or not. Colin King, who did the original FWTS work, has a large set of firmware to test against that he has access to. I would love to make that a public thing that everybody could test. Yeah, I don't think he can get away with that, but that would be awesome as well.
Well, there are some ACPI tables available publicly on the Launchpad.
Right.
He has more assets because he has also private rights, but I think you can, or you probably can ask him like to have a script to fetch the data.
Oh, directly from Launchpad?
Yeah, it's one of the possible way to do it.
Yeah, okay, I'll ask him for that. Yeah, I really want his secret stash of all the other ones, but I know he may not be able to do that.
Does it make sense to tie it into the reference platform at all and distribute the FWTS with all those things in there and test the reference releases automatically?
So you're asking if, as part of the reference platform, we should automatically run a bunch of these tests against that
Against the
reference
platform to start showing results and show how useful it is to people as a hook, but also provide it so it's easy for them to consume and use.
At one point, Naresh had those jobs set up for LoveOS.
Right.
That's an interesting idea. I hadn't really thought about that, but that should probably be part and parcel of that references. Here's the test suite that you run. Here's the results that you should get.
The reference platform probably should have correct ACPI tables.
You'd hope so.
One would hope.
Yeah, that's what I was.
One would hope. Okay. That's a really good idea. But I'll see about looking into that. Okay. Can you mention the SBSAs? SBR stuff or?
Basically, we've got plans, but I can't give any detail today because it's really just starting on it. Not because there's any secrecy, it's just because we're just starting on doing SVSA and SPVR compliance. The architecture team within ARM would own the SVSA systems and software group, which is the guys that you tend to see most here. I'm in the architecture team, but most of the guys here are systems and software group. They would own the SPVR. But even what I've heard today, I've already changed my ideas as to how we might do it. So that is how I do this. But just to say that stuff will come and there is commitment to do it. I know we talked about it in the past as we might do it, but no, we are definitely doing it. It's just that we just started, so I can't say when it will be.
Well, and to be fair, right, SBSA testing and SBVR testing is very ARM specific.
Yeah.
Compliance testing for ACPI, I mean, I had to spend a lot of time on doing some x86 tests and writing those x86 tests for correctness that I would not normally have paid any attention to whatsoever, right? So,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, plus I think the nature will be quite different to some of the stuff. You know, for SBSA, you really want to do a level of testing that you could even run in a pre-silicon environment. So going down a whole kind of LoveOS route, which is the whole distro basically, is not necessarily the best answer.
Or yeah, you actually want to behave before then, not.
Yeah, and you would want something that's more just
right.
So the thing that we do there will look quite different to what we've been doing at an SPVR level, for example. For SPVR level, could we leverage some of the stuff that we're doing in the authorities? Could we contribute there? Yeah, potentially, because we're talking about mandating a minimum set of tables and annual EFI runtime methods. Right? So, yeah.
Right. Well, and I've actually sketched out the idea of doing an SBVR compliance within FWTS, and there's parts of it where you can, it's fairly straightforward to do. You know, like, do you have all the required tables?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, that's easy enough to do. Others, obviously not as easy. Okay. Questions? It's unclear this firmware summit will continue to have a lot of value, but you know, we're more than glad to do it. that feature connects. I will be going to Linux Plumbers, and anybody else that's going to Linux Plumbers, there will be, there's already a mini conference set up for power management, including ACPI. So there should be some good discussion there. That's the end of October, first week in November. And please use the mailing list. That's exactly what it's for. There's been some interesting discussions on it. And it's starting to do what I had hoped it would do, where people are saying, I've got this really strange behavior in my firmware. Who do I talk to? And starting to connect some of those people. Other than that, we can go get coffee. Larry.
Before we do that, there is one topic that's got some discussion this week that I want to raise in here, and that's about option around support.
Okay.
ACPI cards. And for the server space, it's a problem for us because today it's only 36. And so it's an issue we've got to tackle and figure out. And so I at least want to raise it in here and make sure there's an awareness and figure out how we can start to close that gap. So I've talked to Don, I talked to Jeff, talked to a range of people this week, but we definitely need to include that in the context of this forum as well.
Well, are you talking specifically the UEFI bytecode issue or something else?
Fundamentally, the cards that,
Right.
it's a RAID card, a NIC card, HBA, that are out in the market, that customers are looking for us to be able to support exactly the way they do on the x86 system.
Well, I think if Leif just ports QMU to UEFI, then he could just run that code and he'd be fine, right?
There is action on the bytecode stuff. I'm not sure how to say it.
Okay. No, that is a good topic.
For
Yeah.
us in the server space.
Today or will be
This minute.
this minute. Oh, okay. Okay. So you're saying we should all go help Leif get EDC or that's what you're telling us?
Talk to your congressman, that's exactly right.
Okay. Okay. No, that's a valid point. Yeah, maybe we can talk afterwards. I mean, if you know of any resources that have worked with that before, that would be most awesome. But
Yeah, the complexity is we've got to have the card vendors part of this, it's the whole food chain.
oh yeah.
We're gonna make sure it's an issue that gets raised at FloodFest in a couple of weeks.
Okay, good,
Right?
good.
So it's a forum that,
Yep.
a number of the right companies and representatives will be at. So we want to drive this as quickly as we can.
Okay. Did you have more you wanted to add to that, Leif? Or
Really,
okay.
I agree.
Okay. No, thanks, Larry. That's a good point. Other questions, concerns, issues?
I have a question for the good flow of ARM-trusted firmware and the UEFI.
Oh, okay.
Actually, we can see that in ARM standard good flow, the memory initialization is to be done in trusted firmware.
Okay.
And for example, in x86 server, we will have a user configuration interface for the setup UEFI. And also after memory initialization, we will build a source code to UEFI-exe. But if we done the memory initialization in trusted firmware, we can't have the input interface and the output interface for memory initialization. We have no standard interface. So do you have any suggestion for?
My only suggestion is to talk to Art and Leif. That's about all I can offer.
Join the ABSD and come and talk to us in the specification. I think we should be looking at how we get things like PEI and working in ARM. So, which is where we were traditionally done there.
Yeah,
And the specific question as to where is the right place to do it, because I'm not sure that Untitled Firmware is the right place to do it.
yeah, so I think that more of discussion along those lines of how does PI work, you know, how does secure boot work in UEFI secure boot, and is ARM trusted firmware the right way to do UEFI? You know, how does that really work for UEFI the way system vendors want to use UEFI and their UEFI stacks that go all the way down to PI? How did that work with?
Yeah, well that's why, you know, we started off with looking at PIMO because we saw people working in that space. We created a group you were part of. Initially it was just like a group of companies, and then we put that officially into we made it the ABSD charter in the UEFI form. Look at that whole area more widely, and that's where those discussions are taking place. So, and it's still an area that we're still looking at from a spec perspective, but you know, that's the place to raise it.
Does that help some? I mean, it says you have to go do more work, but but is that the kind of answer you're looking for, or at least a starting point? Yeah, absolutely. Other questions? Okay, I say we, whoop.
We support completely upstream. We support completely upstream.
No,
Not yet.
not yet.
The P3 for the wild interrupt, yeah, is Mark already sent a pull request to Thomas. And but for the PCM MSI support, it is not. Yeah. Maybe another release cycle.
Other questions? Okay, I'm not going to give you as much chance to ask questions at this point. So, coffee, have fun. Thank you.
Cheers,